morning, everyone, and welcome to AMHQ Early. I'm meteorologist Jen Carfagno. Wildfires continue to burn out of control in California this morning. It is just unbelievable, the extent of the damage and the destruction, and that it is still ongoing with no relief in sight when we look at the weather conditions. Here is in Northern California, the fires that we are watching. This Tubbs fire has been one of the biggest. The Atlas fire, that was a very large one as well. Very little containment when it comes to these fires. And again, total across the state, including what's in Southern California, 170,000 acres. Red flag warnings are up today, and this does include Napa again in Sacramento, much of the valley, the North Bay Hills, the East Bay Hills. That's where the winds have been especially gusty through the overnight, and that's where we will continue to watch concerns through at least the morning into the afternoon. That's a concern with the winds here, especially no rain, high pressure expanding over the region. And as we see that high pressure expand, it's going to actually ramp up the fire danger again into Southern California as those winds start to increase as well. Those Santa Ana winds, where you get the winds that move from the east to the west and they downslope. And that's a warming, drying out type of wind direction that really causes concern for the fire risk. Same thing for us up here through the valleys up into the Bay Area and just north of there as we get right through the weekend. That's not changing. Humidity wise, this is not changing either. We're still going to have some relatively higher relative humidities during the morning and overnights, but very quickly through the day, those RHs will drop as the temperatures warm up. So here we can see that in motion. This is the overnight relative humidity, and watch through the afternoon. I mean, look, we're down below 10% in Napa. That is extremely dry atmosphere, and it is just contributing to any fires that do exist that can spread very rapidly, especially with the wind. If embers jump, etc., if any winds get erratic, that can help with change direction. For the most part, we're looking at a north wind for now. It'll change a little bit more to northwesterly as we head through today. The real concern, though, is just these speeds. So some of the gustiest winds will be right now what we're dealing with, and then ongoing, and then we'll see some winds ramping up as well into tomorrow afternoon yet again. Air quality concerns are out there. The smoke has been the biggest challenge, of course, closest to the fires and downwind of the fires. Napa unhealthy, Livermore unhealthy for sensitive groups. Honestly, I think you should just assume that there's going to be a challenge, and I would recommend not being outdoors and doing anything like exercise, yard work, etc. that would make you have to breathe in any more of that air than you have to. Try to stay indoors, especially in the areas where it's unhealthy and dangerous, which have been some of the spots. Weather holds for the weekend. It is Thursday, which is Friday Eve. A lot going on as we take a look at that forecast for you. Weather-wise, in the south, there's not going to be a lot in the way of rainfall. The front coming in without much fanfare. We're still seeing some showers in the mid-Atlantic today. That is on its way out, though, and then behind it in the northeast and Midwest, you guys get a brief cool down. Then the warm-up comes back. A lot of folks back into the 80s and 70s. Look at Texas, though. We're back into the 90s. Dallas, 93. There is another storm system that's coming down right into the northwest. It's not going to make it into California, but it moves through the northwestern states, getting into Colorado, and then that energy ejecting out into the plains, bringing severe weather as we get into your Saturday. Be right back with more on Puerto Rico. Welcome back to AMHQ Early. I'm meteorologist Jen Carfagno. The nightmare continues this morning in California as strong winds are now again fueling these deadly. Let's look at this weather forecast today. You know, the concern is that the winds went up yesterday. They increased through the afternoon. They've stayed up overnight, and they're still gusty this morning. This is the area in Northern California that we're watching. The Tubbs fire and the Atlas fire are the two biggest ones, but some new fires have been added, and unfortunately, none are really well contained at all. And containment means just that there's a line around them, and they're not expected to spread. It doesn't mean that it's out, right? Containment doesn't mean that the fire is out. It just means that it's not likely to not be handled. Red flag warnings are up as well. The wind is a big factor in that, of course, the dry conditions. But as the winds ramp up, that's going to actually exacerbate those red flag conditions. Getting into the weekend, high pressure builds in and expands. And with the high pressure sitting over the Great Basin, that's a situation where you start to get the Santa Ana winds, which means the winds come from the east. And then as they move from east to west, it's a downsloping wind, which is a drying wind and a warming wind. And actually it makes the wind speeds usually ramp up as well. So that's the new fire concern into Southern California. When it comes up here into Northern California today, the winds are already gusty. Look at Marysville, gusting to 39 miles per hour. No doubt there's some other spots gusting near there or even higher as well that we just don't have observations for. Relative humidities will be going down through the afternoon. Look at Napa, dropping below 10%, a 9% relative humidity. The atmosphere is completely dry. And of course, those gusty winds are not going to help because we're not getting any help from the weather. You know, we're going to look at the weekend in view and just use this to show you the trends that we are following. There is moisture coming into the northwest, but it's all locked up here in Washington and Oregon. And this is actually a decent plume of moisture, but it's not getting down into Northern California. So we're not going to get any relief in terms of rainfall. The winds, depending on where the high pressure is going to, from day to day watching, we'll watch that forecast very closely, but the winds will be a big factor every day in where the fire and the smoke could potentially spread. Today, it's actually the Bay Area. I think that's going to get some smoke in there. We're also watching as we get into the weekend other stories across the nation. That includes our next system dropping down into the plains and the risk for severe weather. We have that despite the fact that it's October. Yes, you can get severe, although it doesn't happen all that often. We are going to see that risk into Saturday. Sunday, that front pushes east. Behind it, there will be a noticeable temperature change and a drop off in humidity as well. Coming up this morning, Ophelia becomes the 10th hurricane of the season, where it's heading